Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. So you're thinking of buying an EOS R in 2022, otherwise why would you be clicking on this video? For those of you who've been here before, welcome back. If you're new here, take a look around. If you like the videos, definitely consider subscribing to the channel. So EOS R in 2022. If I were to buy the camera for photography, I would be wondering a few things. I would be wondering, is the EOS R valid in 2022? I mean, we have an R6, we have an R5, we have a Sony a7 III, Sony a7 IV, we have that lineup by Fuji, which is pretty awesome for photography. Not to mention you have Olympus and Lumix cameras as well. So where does the EOS R fit in all of that? And the other big question I'd be asking if I was buying an EOS R is, how future-proof is it? If I buy the EOS R today, what happens tomorrow? What happens in 6 months? What happens a year from now? Is the camera going to be obsolete? Is it going to break? Are the features going to be, better in the new cameras? Are they going to be so much better that the EOS R becomes relevant? Those are some questions we're going to look at in this video. Okay, so here we go. The first thing I want to touch on is video, and I just want to get it out of the way. We're not going to spend a lot of time talking about video. I just want to make a quick point. The video you're watching right now is being filmed on a Canon EOS R with a 35mm f1.4 at 1.6 ISO 200, and we're filming in 1080p, all eye codec, and we're going to take this 1080p footage and we're going to expand it to 4K in Premiere Pro and export it as a 4K video for YouTube. So that's what you're looking at right here. This is a 4K video that was shot in 1080p on an EOS R. Make of that what you will, but let's move on to the positives and negatives. We're going to start with the negatives. All right, so let's talk about the negatives of the EOS R from a photography perspective. And the first thing I want to talk about, and it's not really a huge negative, it depends what you want to do, but it's the frame rate. You're shooting at 5 frames a second with the EOS R. So if you're shooting anything like sports, obviously the EOS R is not the one for you. If you're shooting your kids running around, jumping on trampolines and doing things really fast, and you want to be able to shoot, the EOS R is not for you. I've used it to shoot weddings before. Got a video about it right there if you want to go check it out. And one of the things you have to do if you do decide to get the EOS R and shoot weddings or events with it is you have to time your shots. So if there's a bouquet toss or a first kiss or something like that, you just have to keep in mind that you're only getting 5 frames a second. So you want to be able to time your shots when I guess you want to wait for the opportune moment to grab your shots rather than just spraying and praying, because it sprays pretty slow. So you'll be doing a lot of praying. All right, so the second thing with the EOS R that's a negative, and again, it depends on what kind of photography you're doing, is it's low light. I guess the user experience in low light would be the issue. Maybe the processor in the camera is kind of slow. So if you're shooting in a really low light environment, let's say, for example, you're at your parents' house in the living room, there's no studio lights and no bright lights, it's nighttime, and you just have like some lamps on and it's a really dark environment, and you want to shoot in that situation. When you look through the viewfinder or the back LCD panel, the camera tries to, I guess, refresh it, but it can't keep up with whatever it's processing. And it just gets really kind of laggy and choppy and blurry. And it's a weird kind of vibe. I mean, you certainly can shoot in low light. The camera is capable, the sensor is capable. It's just that the EVF and LCD feedback get a little weird. Another downside, and I don't really think it's a downside, even though a lot of people complained about it, was the one memory card slot. I mean, if you're shooting weddings or commercial projects, then the one memory card slot is a bit of an issue, because you're like, oh my God, what if my card fails? Oh, right? And you can kind of worry. But if you are shooting those kinds of things with the EOS R, I would recommend getting multiple memory cards, and every hour or every time you change events or change locations or something like that, just set a timer on your phone, and every so often just switch out the cards so you always have a backup of something. And that's one way to get around it. In my experience so far with the EOS R, it works, it's fine, I have no issues with it. I've shot weddings, I've shot commercial shoots, I've shot all sorts of things, and the cards have never failed, the camera's never failed, nothing's ever gotten corrupted. So knock on wood, hopefully it keeps going in that direction. And the final negative I want to mention about the EOS R is IBIS, in-body image stabilization. It doesn't have any. But is that a big deal? Especially for photography. A lot of photographers come up to me and they're like, oh my God, it doesn't have IBIS, I would never buy it. And you know what? I've been using the EOS R since day one. I pre-ordered it. I got it on the first day it came out. and I fell in love with it, and I've been using it ever since. I've made my money with it. It's a fantastic camera, and never once have I ever said, you know what, I wish this camera had IBIS, because it doesn't matter. Here's the thing. If you're shooting video, I get it, because you're shooting frame, and you want continuity between your frame. So IBIS helps keep everything smooth so you don't get a choppy video. But when it comes to photography and IBIS only works in a very specific situation. So if you're perfectly still, or as still as you can be, and your subject is as still as they can be, then IBIS makes sense if you want a really long exposure. But if there's wind blowing the tree branches, or if your model or subject is moving, or if you're shaky, IBIS is good for nothing. You know, both ends have to be still in order for IBIS to work. Otherwise, it doesn't really help much in photography. All right, so here we go. This is the 24-105 f4L-IS. I bought this as a kit with my EOS R, and a lot of you who are thinking about buying the EOS R might consider buying this lens as part of the kit, the combo thing. So I'm gonna pop this on the camera right now. We're gonna continue filming in 1080p, and you can see what we can do with this bad boy right here. All right, so here we go. This is an f1.4 lens. The 24-105 is an f4 lens, and you can see the background isn't quite so blurry because the aperture isn't quite so big. So just something to keep in mind, but that's what that looks like. So let's move on to the positives with the EOS R. All right, so the first big positive with the EOS R is autofocus. It has dual pixel autofocus, Canon's dual pixel autofocus, which is fantastic autofocus. It is amazing. It was an industry leader for a long time. Now I see Canon and Sony kind of neck and neck, but EOS R is a slightly older tech now. So is the autofocus still good? Hell yeah. There's a lot of camera systems out there which struggle with autofocus, especially continuous autofocus, Fuji. But this camera is amazing. You want to track faces, you want to track eyes. Obviously, when it first came out, and if you buy this camera when it first comes out, you're going to have to do firmware updates because it doesn't have eye tracking. It doesn't have the best autofocus. So if you want to know how to do the firmware, go check out that video. But do your firmware updates, and your autofocus is going to be fantastic. You have eye tracking, face tracking, subject tracking. I have had no issues with the autofocus whatsoever. Plus, if you're used to doing it the old way where you focus, recompose, focus. Remember we had those like 9 dots on the screen, or on the I guess the EVF. No, it wouldn't be an EVF, it would just be a viewfinder. You had the 9 dots on the viewfinder, and you kind of like pick a red dot and you focus, recompose, focus, recompose. You can still do that with the EOS R if you want to do it the old school way. So you can just pick your point, focus, hold the button down halfway, recompose, shoot. If you want to do it that way, you can turn on eye tracking, and the camera does a great job tracking eyes. Sometimes in lower contrast situations like dark, events, that kind of thing, you might have trouble tracking eyes, but in general, it's pretty good. And usually if it can't track the eye, it tracks the face. You'll see a box going around the face instead of the eye. And I find that even though there isn't a box right around someone's eye and you have the box around the face, the EOS R is still smart enough to know to focus on the eye part of the face, which is cool. So you would assume because, the box is around the face, it might focus on a nose or an ear instead of the eye, but it just seems to know the eye is the place to focus, and it does that even if the box isn't around the eye. In terms of focus and the ease of use and that kind of thing, EOS R is fantastic, definitely future-proof there. Now, the other positive with the EOS R in photography is the fact that it's got 30 megapixels of delicious goodness. 30 megapixels, in my opinion, is kind of like the sweet spot. The image files aren't too big and they're not too small. So if you want to blow them up and print them, you're good. If you want to shrink them down for social media, you're good. So I think 30 megapixels is fantastic. Plus, if you think about it right now, the only camera in Canon's lineup, the mirrorless lineup, that has more megapixels is the R5. So the EOS R still is the second highest megapixel count camera in Canon's lineup, although there is an R1 coming apparently, and maybe an R7, R8. Don't know what they are yet, but those are in the works. Might be APS-C size cameras, whereas the EOS R is a full frame, which is another thing that bodes well for it. So you saw that nice creamy background, shallow depth of field earlier. That's what you can do with full frame. Another positive with the EOS R, and another reason why I think it's future-proof, is it has a great LCD screen and a great EVF. Now, I went from 5D Mark III to the EOS R, and it didn't take long to get used to that EVF, electronic viewfinder. It looks great. Sometimes you forget that you're even looking at a screen in there. It looks so good. And the screen on the back, the LCD screen, number one, it's fully articulating. It can turn around Right now, I'm looking at myself on the screen, so it's great if you want to shoot selfies and videos for YouTube, that kind of thing. I know for photography, it doesn't really matter. But the other nice thing about the LCD screen on the EOS R is it's fully touch capable. So if you want to, adjust your settings by touching the screen, you can totally do that with the EOS R. And all the new cameras have that. So that's another reason why the EOS R is future-proof. And another positive I want to talk about is Canon's reliability. Canon cameras just work, and they get out of your way, so you don't have to fuss with the camera. You don't have to worry about the camera. As a photographer, that is amazing because I don't want to be tripping over my camera and thinking about settings and where's that in the menu and how do I do this. Canon cameras just work, and they work, and they work, and they work. Like, I picked up the EOS R on the first day it was available for sale at my camera shop. I've had it, October 2018. I've had it since then, and I have not had any issues with it. No errors, no crashing, no nothing. You flip it on, you set up your exposure, and you go, and it just works. You pop your pocket wizards on there, your flashes, whatever, and it just goes. And I think that's the beautiful thing about the EOS R and any Canon camera in general. It just works. So I don't foresee the Canon EOS R falling behind or becoming obsolete because it's gonna break. I think this is a camera that was designed to be, I don't know, it has the 5D Mark IV sensor in it, which is amazing for photography. So that sensor was designed to be a workhorse sensor for 5D Mark IV users, and now it's in the EOS R. So I think this sensor is going to last a long time, and the EOS R is still going to be relevant 2, 3, 4 years from now. It's still going to be producing amazing images. And speaking of the sensor, it may not have as much dynamic range as the newer cameras with the newer sensors, but here's the thing with dynamic range. If you shoot raw, you can adjust everything in post, and yeah, you might have a little more latitude with the highlights and the darks and the shadows, but think about it like this. If you shoot high dynamic range or shoot raw, you get how many billions of colors, right? And you put that into your Lightroom or your Capture One or whatever your editing program is, and then you export it as a 16-bit TIFF into Photoshop, right? So your billions of colors go down to 16 bits. Then you edit, and you export it as a JPEG. Now you're down to 8 bits. So you have your 8-bit JPEG, and you toss that up on Instagram or Facebook or your portfolio or whatever, send it off to a client. So, all that dynamic range ends up coming down to 8 bits anyway. So does it really make a difference to have an extra stop or two dynamic range? I don't think so. I think that's just being a little too nitpicky, but that's my opinion. If you have a different opinion, let me know down below. And the other really nice thing about the EOS R that makes it really, really future-proof is the fact that it has an RF mount. So if you have old EF lenses like this 35 and 50 millimeter, you can mount it on the EOS R without any problem. Now, here I have the regular Canon EF to RF adapter, and here I have a third-party JJC EF to RF adapter. And I can tell you, after using both of them for over a year now, there is no difference. You want to pay the money for the Canon adapter or you want to buy a third-party adapter, there is no difference with autofocus speeds. There's no difference with performance in the lenses in any way whatsoever. So there you go. If you're upgrading from a DSLR and you have a bunch of EF glass, I don't think you really need to buy RF glass. You can just continue using your EF glass. It works beautifully on the new RF system. And of course, if you want to upgrade to the new RF glass, you certainly can. And yeah, it makes the EOS R very future-proof. All right, there's one more positive I want to talk about, but before I do that, we are going to throw the nifty 50 on there. This is with the JJC third-party adapter. We're going to toss this on the EOS R and continue filming. All right, so now we are filming with the EF 50mm f1.4, and this is a decent lens. It's a great nifty 50. It's a good all-arounder, and you can see we got the creamy background going, and it looks pretty good. I like this lens a lot. And let's move on to the final positive with the EOS R, and that is the price. The price is absolutely ridiculous. It is ridiculous. You could buy it brand new, or you could find it on the used market even cheaper. And I'm telling you, if you look at the features that the EOS R comes with, and you look at the price of the EOS R, and then compare it to the R6 and R5, it's a no-brainer, man. Like the bang for the buck that you get for the EOS R and the features you get, it's not even worth buying an R5 or an R6 at this point, unless you absolutely need the features of an R5 and R6. If you need those features, then those cameras become valuable. But if you're just a general shooter, if you're a hobbyist, if you want to go out there and take photos, if you're new to photography and you want to, like, the EOS R is not a beginner camera. It's kind of a little more advanced, but it's a great starter camera. You know, I don't see professionals buying the EOS R anymore, but if you are professional and you want a second camera, I think the EOS R is very good. If you're a hobbyist and you want a really advanced camera, fantastic for you. So the point I really want to drive home here is that, like, the bang for the buck, the features that you get eye tracking, you get 4K video, you get dual pixel autofocus, you get a great sensor out of the EOS or the 5D Mark IV, you get EVF, you get an LCD screen, it's fully touch capable, great menus. Camera technology after the EOS R have not developed that much. You know what I mean? If you look at the R5 and the R6, what you're getting in terms of features, yeah, it's better camera. They have better features, but is it that much better? Is the cost of the R5 and R6 worth those extra features? I would submit to you, unless you absolutely do the kind of photography or the kind of work, videography, whatever the case may be, that demands those features, I would buy the EOS R. I think hands down, the EOS R is the best bang for the buck camera in Canon's lineup. I've said this before and I'm sticking to my guns. I think it's the best bang for the buck camera in Canon's lineup. And if you get a good opportunity to buy it, just buy it. And if you don't believe me, do it yourself. Do the math yourself. List all the features that the EOS R has, and then list all the features that these other cameras have that the EOS R doesn't, and then compare it and look at the extra features and look at the extra price and the money. And it's like, I don't know. And the other point I want to make is that if you're thinking about buying an EOS R5 or R6, maybe consider buying an EOS R instead, because here's the thing. I've been a photographer since 2005, and I've gone through so many camera bodies. Every few years, it's new body, new body, new body, new body. And lenses will last you your entire career. If you buy a good lens, you'll have that for your whole career. If you buy a body, it's going to last you, what, 4, 5, 6 years, and then you replace it with the next one, and then the next one, and the next one. So rather than paying the extra money for these two cameras, why not buy an EOS R, take the extra money, and put it into buying a good lens like this 35mm f1.4. This lens is going to last me my whole career. It's amazing, right? And a quality lens can have a bigger impact on your photos than a body. A body just takes the photos, right? The lens adds the character and the lighting and the depth of field and the sharpness and the clarity. That all comes from here. So if you ask me, after spending, what, 18 years in the industry so far, put your money into good lenses and just get the body that gets you where you need to go. But the lenses, that's the money maker. All right, we are now back on the 35mm f1.4, and this is one of my favorite lenses. I love this lens. Actually, when I sold my Sony a7 III, the guy that I sold it to was selling his Canon gear, and one of the lenses he was selling was this 35mm. So I flipped that a7 III for the 35mm, and I absolutely love this lens. This is one of my favorite lenses of all time. So we're going to close out this video by answering the question that we asked at the beginning of this video: is the EOS R future-proof? Is it worth buying in 2022? And in a word, yes, absolutely. I think it's future-proof. Like, here's the thing. If we look at all the new, this needs to be a little bit brighter. If we look at all the cameras that are coming out and the new tech that's in these cameras, what are they really offering that's so much better than the EOS R? Like, where are cameras going to go with photography? I can see with video, cameras improving significantly, but when it comes to photography, you've got a great sensor in the EOS R, great autofocus, great features, great lenses. Like, what else do you need as a photographer? You need the camera to shoot the photos for you. You want to put it up on a drone and camera go do the work for me. Maybe that's the future. I don't know, but I can't really imagine any kind of tech that's going to go into new cameras that's going to be so much better than the EOS R. But like I said, there are limitations. Shooting in low light, the frames per second that you could shoot at, the lack of IBIS, if that's a thing for you. I don't really think that's a big problem. But if you're thinking of investing in the EOS R now in 2022, I say go for it. I mean, Canon is going to come out with an R1, which is a flagship level camera. I don't think that's going to knock you off your rails. And then there's rumors of an R8 or R7 coming out, and those are rumored to be APS-C size sensors. And in my opinion, I would rather go with the full frame so you can get this beautiful shallow depth of field Like, you can get this with full frame, but you'll be hard pressed to get that with an APS-C size sensor. And for me, that's important. Maybe for you, it's not so important, but to each their own. Everyone has their different tastes. So for me, I think the EOS R is a fantastic buy in 2022, and I think that you'll be happy with it as a purchase. I think it'll last you for a lot of years. And if you are buying the EOS R used, just make sure you take a look at the shutter count, because the shutters are rated for a certain number of shots. I don't remember exactly what it is on the EOS R. I think it's like 300,000 or something like that. I'll put it down here. But make sure you ask what the shutter count is on the camera if you're buying it used, and if it's close to that number, I would pass on it and look for another one. All right, and that's it for this video. Hopefully it wasn't too long. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, leave them down below. And if you want to know how I set up my touch bar on the EOS R, check out that video right there. It's pretty handy for photographers. And with that being said, peace out. Thanks for watching. See you guys in the next video.